Back again. Another episode of A Muslim and an Atheist Breaks Bread. It's Pops.
I'm good, man.
Good. Again, just to let everyone know, we are covering, but we are discussing what's going on in Israel, Palestine. First of all, I just want to say to everyone who's out there, anyone who's related to anyone out there who's watching the video, we do not agree with any violence to any beings at any point in time. It's a very deep and complex issue. Some people may say it's simple, but it is deep and it is complex. And there are both rights and wrongs on both sides, is what I would personally say. And that's from my limited understanding. You never know, at the end of this I might change my mind. But we are going to dive into it anyway. We're going to try and do it as sensitively as possible. So yeah, that's it really. Obviously, if you don't know what I've got to say, you don't agree with it, then just turn over, turn off. That's all we can say really. Yeah, anyway, we're going to watch a video. It's called Gaza Explained, because like I said, from what's gone on, I'm hearing a lot of mainstream media about terrorist attacks. You know, you've got terrorists terrorizing Israel constantly. But I want to know where that comes from. I mean, I don't ever think, you know, terrorism comes from the act of terror. It's almost like a cycle, isn't it? When you get people who are abused, and they often become abusive as a last resort of a learned behaviour, almost. It's a learned behaviour. But yeah, I want to know why this conflict that's been going on, this has been going on since I was a child. I remember this going on when I was young. So for it to still be going on today is crazy. And for one side to still be oppressed. In fact, for there anywhere in the world, for anyone to live in an apartheid state is crazy. Now, I don't get how, whether you're Jewish, Muslim, Christian, whatever you are, if you fundamentally believe in human rights and you're crying out about, yeah, but they've done this to us and they've done that to us, how can you then go from day to day knowing that people are living cramped together in a ghetto where everything that happens within that is basically controlled by someone else, so that you can't control your own way of living, and it's an open air prison. They don't have access to clean water. You know, people are getting killed in there daily, and then wonder why there's been such a violent response. So that's pleading ignorance to me. It's almost like it's gaslighting, isn't it? It's toxic. It's gaslighting the situation. Like, oh, why is this now happened? Because people's human rights are being infringed daily. Again, that being said, I still don't condone acts of violence if that happens, but I guess diplomacy is the first thing to go when it's time to go. It's the only thing I can say.
Has there been any diplomacy?
Well, I'm sure over the years there has been diplomacy. In fact, I'm sure before there was diplomacy, because I'm sure that at some point people were saying from Palestine or from Gaza and from the West Bank that they would have been happy, and this may not say they're happy forever, but to go back to the 1967 Borders Agreement. So I don't know if that's that thing that we were talking about on the last video.
60-40.
Yes, but when those borders were first drawn up, they were drawn up and people were like, okay with, not okay, but they could live with that. But from the encroachment onto land, that's obviously raised tensions, and things have been happening ever since. Now, I don't necessarily agree with, you know, the fact of that, you know, because Gaza or what they called? What's the word I'm looking for?
Israel.
No, not Israel. Who's the people that were in Gaza?
GAZA, Palestinians.
Yeah, what's the terrorist organisation?
Hamas.
Hamas, sorry, I keep on thinking of Hezbollah. Hamas. Because Hamas, I don't necessarily agree with Hamas attacking Israelis or killing innocent people like you said. But if they did, murder is murder. And even if they didn't, if they claim they didn't, then that's wrong. At the end of the day, like I said to you, women and children
used to be off limits.
Off limits.
No longer.
Yeah, women and children are always off limits. Civilians, man, leave them alone. But yeah, alright then, we're going to jump into this video, see what's popping.
We are putting a complete siege on Gaza. No electricity, no food, no water, no gas.
So this is what I mean, this is the craziest thing, right? So this is the opening statement. So these people are acting like reactively because their emotions are like, yo, so we're just going to lock you up. But for them to even have the control to do that is crazy. So a whole country or state full of people you have who don't live there, you don't live there. So, but why you control everything that goes in and out of there? So now there's a war, you can cut off all their water, all their electricity. No food can go in and out. So essentially you're just going to starve everyone to death now.
No gas, it's all closed. We're fighting animals and are acting accordingly.
That was the defense minister of Israel, responding to the deadly attack on October 7th by Hamas, a militant group based in Gaza. Hamas launched rockets, killed over 1,400 civilians, and kidnapped close to 200 people. Within days, Israel bombarded the Gaza Strip, killing several thousand, wiping out entire families, and striking ambulances, border crossings, and residential buildings. At the same time, Israel told over 1 million civilians to leave their homes and move south, warning them of an escalation of violence in the north. But Israel is bombarding the south too, leaving Palestinians trapped.
For as long as this conflict has existed, movement in and out of the Gaza Strip has been, to one degree or another, restricted. The Prime Minister of the Israeli occupation, Benjamin Netanyahu, he knows very well that people are not able to leave.
I was going to say, that's a bit of a, you know, if I wanted to go to Palestine, do I have to go to Israel and then like travel to Palestine? So I'm assuming there's no airport in Palestine.
I assume there must have some little ones there, but I assume, I don't know.
The only reason I say is because if Israel is saying, right, we're going to attack you in the north, but then they're just going to bomb everywhere in the south, like, again, why would you trust what they're saying anyway? That just sounds like, all right, we're going to attack you in the north. Because then, obviously, if you've unoccupied the whole north, then Israel can then just go and occupy the north, innit? And then you're all corralled, essentially, innit? Everyone's corralled in the south. So it ultimately makes you an easier target.
I think it'll be, the townships will be around the resources, water and things like that, and so it won't just be bit of land anyway. So there must be a rationale for those towns to have built up where they are, water, something. But I don't know, there's no logic. Complete eradication don't need a logic. It's a simple task. Anybody that not Israeli, kill them.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is, if you're trying to eradicate the terrorist threat, yeah, why wouldn't, I guess that's it, I'm not going to say like, I'm just trying to say like, why keep people in the strip? If there's innocent people, like I said, women and children,
Let them out.
Let them out. Let them out.
Because they in turn go away and I don't even know what the logic is there. I say eradication is the only thing. Them don't want to have to deal with it again.
Yeah.
So if them kill them all off now, that argument done. Them can get on with saying, you know, you anti-Semitic. In other words, you can't call me a white man black.
Yeah. But the other thing that this is, like, there's such thing as proportionate response, isn't it? Proportional response. You don't think so?
I've heard about these things, personal experience. A wise man gets a chance to hammer berries, you bro. Proportion has nothing to do with it. They just what? Yeah, let's give them everything one time. Whether it's the school teacher or anybody else. If your back's against the wall, do not expect proportion.
No, I get that. It's like, I remember like before, when I got stabbed years ago, I remember someone coming up to me like an old school gangster and said, Evan, you know what, you might be able to fight people. Remember, there's no rules on the street, you know. So he said to me, there's no rules on the street. If someone's going to come take you out, they're going to take you out. And that's a fact. But there's still rules to international warfare. Or warfare.
There were. I think we're.
I think people were getting tried. People were getting tried for this not even long ago.
Yeah, but these guys are barefaced doing it on the back of a political system which seems to be collapsing left, right, and centre.
True.
Euros going down, dollars going down, England's belly up on its side. You know, so Israel, if not now, then when? Because the Chinese won't let it happen. Because they'll come in and be policing the thing. So while they got everybody sufficiently distracted with their economical woes and lack of H2O or whatever it's called, they can slide all this rubbish in. The British public don't really care. They got enough flights going to Israel every year. Keep them sweet. They already know who's on side.
The Gaza Strip is the smaller of the two Palestinian territories occupied by Israel since 1967. This sliver of land, only 25 miles long and 7.5 miles wide, is home to over 2 million Palestinians, making it one of the most densely populated areas in the world. For the last 16 years, residents here have been living under a harsh blockade that allows Israel to control the flow of electricity, fuel, food, water, and medical supplies, so they can dictate when Palestinians receive essentials and when they're denied. That control is rooted in violence and destruction that goes back decades. Before the establishment of Israel, Gaza was part of what became known as historic Palestine under Ottoman rule and later under British occupation. In 1947, as the British prepared to leave, they left the fate of Palestine up to a newly formed United Nations, who voted to divide Palestine into a Jewish state and an Arab state. Soon, Zionist forces and militias began to forcibly expel hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from their land to establish.
Do you know what really, like, not irritates me, but I just often wonder, like, when will people actually... I mean, it is bonfire night, people. We all know what bonfire night was, yeah? When will people actually rise up against the British government? I'm not saying like that should happen. People in general.
They all want to be
whether
British.
It's Palestinians, whether it's Israelis, because surely this whole conflict has been caused by the British United Nations, but essentially it was the British, ain't it? So... I don't get what made them think that it was a good idea to do that. That's what I don't get. And then obviously, so this whole conflict for 75 years has been caused by the British.
No. Been caused by the Jews. The Jews have a plan.
Well, no, but it's not. No, but it's not caused by the Jews because the Jews weren't in control. So if I say to you, right, yeah, one day I want to own that house over there. Yeah, one day I want to own that house over there. Now, I might say that to you, but the man who lives in that house, who owns that house or owns that piece of land, innit? It's him. Whether I get control of that, it's his thing, innit? So he can come out and give me that house. If he's got a tenant in that house and he rents that house to them, yeah, but then he comes around to me and goes, "Yeah, I'm going to give you my yard." That's not my fault. That's his fault. If a man turns around to me and he rents his house out to someone else and I want a new house, and he turns around to me and says, "I'm going to give you my house, even though people live in there, I'm going to kick them out."
Yeah,
that's not my fault.
Vacant possession.
Yeah, that's not my fault. That's the landlord or the house owner's fault.
Right. So in terms of Britain, no, what you have to agree is that Britain is not extra to this. Britain is wholeheartedly complicit. Every single act that Israel ever do, Britain is complicit.
So what I'm trying to say is like you've got Palestinians and Jews fighting each other, yeah.
No, you got Palestinians being murdered by Jews.
You've got Palestinians murdering Jews, and you got Jews murdering Palestinians. So what? No Palestinians have murdered any Jews. And no Palestinians have murdered any Jews.
Look at the stats. If there's a couple of them dead, like I say, the response is overwhelming. If they were killing two of them, you'd have known.
That's not what I just asked you. A proportional response to the thing. You said it's not a thing. If someone's coming for you, they're coming for you. So it doesn't matter how many kills, how many.
This is not that messy. They said, the Israelis said the Palestinians blew up a hospital in Israel. Isn't that what started it?
It was a concert, wasn't it?
Was it something?
It was something, but
and the Palestinians.
Hamas come out and said they did it.
When? No.
They come out before show and said that they did that and was holding up pictures and said they kidnapped the people and had the people kidnap the 200 people. They've given some back now. That's
I also saw a program that was saying where they were saying they didn't do that, especially the kidnapping thing, to coordinate 200 people around the world getting kidnapped. There's 200 people in Gaza they could have kidnapped. Why would they go all around the world with it? They said some of that was AI stuff. There's been so many takes on it. Right? The real story is yet to come. That was the 9/11 incident that they tried to say this mega world thing is happening by a group of resistance fighters in a prison. But all of a sudden, they're all over the world kidnapping people. They're so organized. Come on.
Do you know what it is? All I'm trying to say is, right, for the sake of language, you can't say that Palestinians haven't killed Jewish people because they clearly have. Well, they have. Over the years.
They have, man.
So what, you think that no Palestinians have killed any Jewish people?
I don't believe they have.
You don't believe that? Okay, well, that's obviously a bias thing then. That's just...
It's not that, Aaron. It's they're living in a prison. You don't really get to kill armed soldiers, and you ain't got nothing to kill them with.
What you think? You think
Israeli police?
Prison officers don't die in jail. You think they don't get attacked and stuff though? You don't think it? Even though we know that what Palestine are fighting with is inadequate. Couple rockets from here, there, that probably just about reaching somewhere in Israel, it can happen.
And you see the bit where they say Israel is controlling everything that goes in and comes out.
But my point being is, even though they're controlling everywhere that goes in and out, they still blew somewhere up and killed 1,000 people. No one's disputed that
still
fact.
To be proven here.
That
was what they used as the mega event to start with. Is it true? Still to be determined. But it started the thing. That's all they needed was an event.
Can I say something? I think it's safe to say that Hamas, who actually I did watch something, said that they come out and they did do it. Whether they did do it, didn't do it, or whether they just thought, right, we'll take the blame for it, I don't know. But I'm going to go on the side of that Hamas did do that. And Hamas have done attacks. It's like when they had the PBL from years ago, which was set there, they were blowing up pieces of Israel, and Israel had to go into Lebanon. So clearly, Israeli people can die in this conflict.
As them have this thing called the iron grid thing, where nothing shoot down, nothing. No fire them was showing how it's impossible America have a warship over here controlling this side. They have the iron grid. Within seconds, it shoots down any rockets or anything that comes at it. You don't hear them talking about these things, but they have and have been building
I know,
defenses
but
against this for the longest
I
time.
get the defense.
So the stories and the
that.
fragments of stories that we hear do not put together a sufficient story for anybody to say categorically that person did this or didn't do it. Just like they said, 9/11 was who Saddam was saying, was it? No, it wasn't. Wasn't it Bin Laden? Oh, was it? No, it was Gaddafi.
Okay.
The point is they say and do whatever they want whenever it suits them.
Okay, but what I'm trying to say is, for the sake of impartial, you believe one thing. You believe that no Palestinians have killed any Jewish people.
No,
you just
I
think
don't
it's a
believe that.
medication.
I just approve it.
So what I believe is, regardless of that, what I was trying to say was, it's not, whether it's the Palestinians or Israelis that are at conflict with each other over this mess. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
But no one seems to be bothered about the British and or the UN and their involvement in this. Now I understand why you're saying, well, why would Israel? Because Israel are basically getting everything they want, so why are they going to be bothered by it? But even when acts like this happen, and they're using it as a catalyst to destroy, to massacre the Palestinian people, people on social media want to go, oh yeah, but Israel, but forgetting the implications of this country. I never hear people like marching on like the government over here to say, but hold on, do you not feel like you have
A responsibility.
a responsibility and an obligation to get involved in this? And I mean, transparently
They
getting
can't
involved.
get involved because they're
But they
already
choose not
involved.
to.
They're already involved. You can't go in and broker peace when you're on the side of the Israelis, can you?
But what I'm trying to say is, okay, so this is my point now. So when we have governments should move transparency. Like, there's been no one come out from the British government to condemn, say anything about this should happen. So if you're Palestinian, pro-Palestinian, whatever, if you're just on the side of human rights, you should be hammering on the door of Parliament. You should be marching on Parliament to be like going, yo, what is going on here? Rather than what I see on socials, which is breeding a lot of anti-Semitism and the Jewish people. Yeah, I get it, like Israel's full of Jewish people. But most of them people, most of the people that live here don't know about that.
And black people, anti-Semitic, which is funny by default. So yeah, if you want to say breeding a lot of what? The world is upside down. You know, either you're a Semite or you ain't. There's no halfway house. So because someone who's clearly not a Semitic says I'm Semitic, that does not make them a Semitic. Whereas when a Pakistani man says I'm Semitic, you know what? You
talk about Semitic because of the language?
Semitic by history, DNA, gene.
Yeah.
You know, a Russian is not a Semite. A German is not a Semite. These people come from Russia and Germany.
Okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying, but they're Jewish and they're Italian.
Right, and the Bible clearly says when the people who call themselves Jews, but it's not them. So yeah, the only place in the Bible that categorically talks about them says, watch out for when these people come and start with their joke thing. Jews, but they're not. Bible says that, bro. Christian people and the story and the deal that the Jews made with the Romans and has continued ever since with these 5 books of Moses.
Why would you say they're not Jews though? Jews or Judaism's a religion, same way as Islam, right? And same way as Christianity, yeah? Yeah?
No.
No, it's not.
No.
Okay, why isn't it?
Remember, right, the Jewish is a...
So if you're talking about Hebrews, Hebrews and Jews are different things.
You're right, they are different things. But then we're using them in the same sentence, in the same thing, without distinguishing, right? The Hebrews in the Bible had a covenant with God. The Russians living in Russia never had no covenant with nobody.
Wait, alright then, so this is what I'm trying to explain to you now. So that means that every Muslim that wasn't born in Mecca or Saudi, where the religion started, where the covenant of God started, everyone who's ever reverted to Islam has not got a covenant with God. Same as Christianity. If you was not from that sect, that where Jesus came from and done that, then you don't have a covenant with God either. It's the same thing. So what I'm trying to say is, you can't say people aren't Jewish because they wasn't born where Judaism comes from. If they follow the religion and they follow the faith of the book, then they're Jewish, aren't they?
No.
They're not Hebrews, but they're Jewish.
Right. So they're all Jewish whether they follow it or not.
What do you mean?
They don't need to follow to be Jewish. They say they're Jewish. Any. Your mama came from Russia or from Germany, you're Jewish. That's all there is to it, innit? But they're not Hebrews that the Bible was talking about. So the religion of the Hebrews, like I said, has been embraced by some other people. And they're not trying to say we took this religion. They're trying to say we are the people of this religion, which is what's happening. No one cares whether they got the religion or not. But you can't put yourself as the Queen of Sheba, and you can't become an African, start fitting yourself into an African story, just like we've heard about Jesus blonde-haired, blue-eyed for 2,000 years. But he ain't blonde-haired or blue-eyed. People in that region can't be blonde-haired or blue-eyed. Someone who's a rabbi and studies for 18 years to become that doesn't just magically do it because the book says there's a set procedure that people go through. You go to uni, it lasts for 3 years. You could have smart little more, you're not finishing 3 months.
Yes, but what I'm trying to say to you, does that mean they're Hebrews or does that mean they're Jewish then? That means they're not Hebrews, it
the
means
Bible
they're
talks
Jewish.
about look out for Jews. It doesn't talk about look out for Hebrews. So this is what I say. Revelation, when it's giving the warning, look out for the Jews who say they are, but they're not. That's what the Bible
Is that what it says in the Bible?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, let's go on anyway. Let's go on.
To establish the state of Israel. Many internally displaced Palestinians.
You know the Bible says that. Maybe he was talking about the Christians. Maybe he was talking about the Christians.
Fled to this narrow stretch of land that would later become known as the Gaza Strip.
So these refugees became refugees because they were pushed out of their towns and villages. Some of them literally live a mile away from what used to be their towns and villages.
Many others were forced to flee to neighboring Arab countries. Overwhelmed by refugees, these countries immediately declared war against the new state of Israel to support Palestinian Arabs. They eventually lost to Israel, but Jordan ended up occupying the West Bank, and Egypt occupied Gaza City and nearby towns along these ceasefire lines. Then, in 1967, another war broke out. Amid Palestinian resistance and fearing threats from neighboring Arab countries, Israel launched a full-scale attack on Jordan, Syria, and Egypt. In just 6 days, Israel captured the Gaza Strip and the Sinai from Egypt, the West Bank from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria. This was the beginning of the Israeli occupation in Gaza that continues today. Israel took control of all movement from and to the Gaza Strip by land, air, and sea. It placed troops along this line and inside the Gaza Strip, and allowed Palestinians to travel between the Gaza Strip, Israel, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem. But just a few months after the war, even though Palestinians now lived under Israeli control, they began to be referred to as non-citizens or foreign residents in official Israeli documents.
You inherit this status from your parents and grandparents, being stateless, unrecognized, with no rights. And, this impacts your life.
This was also when Israel started to build settlements for Jewish Israelis inside of Gaza. To Palestinians, this meant even more land being taken away from them. And they were being closed in. Israel did not allow Palestinians here to operate their own seaport or airport. Within the Gaza Strip, Israel developed key industries, like agriculture, to cater to Israeli and West Bank markets, taking advantage of Gaza's cheap labor market and paying Palestinians very little. These economic challenges led to the rise of a prominent Islamic social charity, Mujama al-Islamiyya. At the time, this charity, partially funded by Israel, built schools, mosques, clinics, and provided more food for Palestinians in Gaza. But tension simmered. Israel feared a growing resistance movement, and in response, soldiers often frisked, arrested, and detained residents. In 1987, that tension reached a breaking point after an Israeli truck crashed into a civilian car, killing 4 Palestinians. Palestinians immediately responded with protests, strikes, and boycotts against occupation. It would become known as the First Uprising, or Intifada. And that same year, Mujama al-Islamiyya transformed into a militant group, Hamas.
Hamas was a group that came about during the first Palestinian uprising and was not really a part of institutional politics for some time.
They weren't in charge of Gaza yet, but they wanted to liberate Palestinian territories from Israel's control and considered Israel an illegitimate state. After the first year of the Intifada, during which over 140 Palestinians in Gaza were killed, Hamas and other militant groups began to attack Israelis more directly. Then, the Intifada grew more violent in 1991, which is also when Israel introduced a permit system that greatly restricted Gaza residents' ability to work, travel through Israel, or access the West Bank and East Jerusalem. By the end of the First Intifada, Israeli forces had killed over 1,000 Palestinians, and Palestinian militants had killed over 100 Israelis throughout Israel and the occupied territories. The uprising ended after the internationally brokered Oslo Peace Accords between Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization, or the PLO.
Yeah, it's what we just said, isn't it? A proportional response, isn't it? If you're willing to go and kill people, know that people are going to get killed, isn't it? So, are you prepared to take that proportional response?
Clearly they are. Still there,
That's-
75 years later.
This is what I mean, isn't it? So the numbers are kind of irrelevant, really, isn't it? How many people are getting killed on each side? It's just people are getting killed, isn't it?
This was a liberation movement with an armed wing that fought for Palestinian rights for decades. The PLO agreed to disarm and recognize Israel's right to exist, but Hamas, which had very little political support at the time, strongly opposed it. The deal also created a new governing body, the Palestinian Authority, or PA, which allowed political parties and elections in the Gaza Strip. The PA was granted some autonomy within small areas, but Israel still controlled the territories and the flow through these crossings. The Oslo Agreement also promised Palestinians some level of autonomy and a path to statehood in 5 years. But that never happened. Instead, what followed was more Israeli settlements on Palestinian land. And a year later, following an attack by an Israeli settler in the West Bank and a series of bombings by Palestinian militants, including Hamas, Israel's prime minister called for the construction of a fence around the Gaza Strip. Gaza now had a physical barrier between it and the outside world. These moves made Palestinians trust the Israeli government and peace negotiations even less, and it would lead to a second uprising. On September 28, 2000, Israeli politician Ariel Sharon visited Al-Aqsa Mosque, a Muslim holy site in Jerusalem that's largely inaccessible to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. This visit sparked widespread protests and violent clashes, resulting in Israeli forces killing 4 Palestinian children the next day. And Palestinian militants carried out suicide bombings. Back in the Gaza Strip, Palestinians broke down much of this barrier. The Israeli government soon built it back up and heavily militarized it with more troops and observation posts. They further canceled travel and work permits, restricting movement through this crossing even more, and eventually destroyed Gaza's only major airport and its under-construction seaport. By the end of the Second Intifada in 2005, Palestinian militants had killed over 900 Israelis, and Israeli forces killed over 3,000 Palestinians. The Second Intifada gradually came to an end as Israel dismantled all Jewish Israeli settlements in the Gaza Strip and withdrew the ground troops. Then, another internationally brokered agreement gave the PA control of this crossing with Egypt on the Gaza side. and allowed trucks and convoys to flow between the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. But Israel didn't let that happen. At the time of the first legislative election after the Second Intifada, Fatah, a party backed by the PA and PLO that had negotiated with Israel, was in power. But many Palestinians saw Fatah and its approach as ineffective. Hamas, which was now a political party in addition to being a militant group, won most of the seats in 2006.
People voted for Hamas as a way to express their disapproval of the ongoing status quo, which was that the peace process had failed and they had had two uprisings and no state was in sight.
In response to an armed militant party winning, Israel banned laborers from leaving Gaza for work. Then when militants captured an Israeli soldier, Israel carried out airstrikes in Gaza and tightened its control on the sea, limiting fishing capabilities to only 6 miles. Politically within Gaza, Hamas had won the election, but the PA was still the governing body, with Fatah under its wing. A conflict broke out between Hamas and Fatah, and Hamas seized power of the entire strip in 2007. This is when Israel put Gaza under the official blockade that continues today, tightening Israel's grip over Gaza even more, trapping over 2 million Palestinians inside. This time, Israel closed the main crossing for commercial goods, made travel even more restrictive, banned exports from Gaza, and imposed restrictions on the import of essential items such as fuel, medicine, and food. They even used mathematical formulas to determine the necessary caloric intake for people in Gaza to control how much food they would allow in.
Basically, we live a slow death in Gaza, even before major escalations. People cannot travel freely. We have Israeli drones hovering around 24/7. There's always stress.
Over the next several years, reoccurring conflicts and airstrikes made the already devastating impacts of this blockade worse. Israeli airstrikes destroyed vital infrastructure, such as water and power plants. Repairs were delayed by the blockade, which impacted the delivery of construction materials. And for each militant attack on Israelis, Israel killed far more Palestinians in retaliation. At times, Israel would slightly lift restrictions, but it was never close to matching the humanitarian needs of Palestinians in Gaza. According to a UN report from 2022, this 16-year blockade had made 78% of the water in Gaza undrinkable, left 62% of Palestinians in Gaza in need of food assistance, living with rolling power cuts that last on average 11 hours per day.
That is our normal life. We would have 8 hours of electricity, 12 hours of electricity. It changes depending on the situation and the availability of fuel. We are completely dependent on Israel.
This is what many Palestinians and international law calls collective punishment.
Collective punishment is when cancer patients cannot travel because they get denied. And collective punishment means also that Palestinians cannot have their own hospitals and they cannot treat their patients. Collective punishment means the people of Gaza now are punished for the most recent escalation.
When we look at the crime of genocide, which is, the intentional destruction of a whole people in part or in whole, we are seeing elements of that crime being committed and carried out in the Gaza Strip right now.
There's equating between Hamas and all Palestinians. And this is not the first time that we're going to see people in Gaza and civilians in Gaza, half of whom are children, pay the price for Hamas or anything else.
Israeli and US leaders have emphasized that Israel has the right to defend itself by wiping out Hamas completely. But the majority of casualties in the Gaza Strip aren't Hamas fighters. They're civilians.
It's an interesting question to consider whether or not things would have. The occupation of the Palestinian territories has been since 1967, and the original Palestinian displacement was 1948, and Hamas didn't really emerge until much later than that. I think that anybody who follows Israeli and Palestinian politics, with some level of honesty, knew that if what happened hadn't happened, something else was going to happen because the status quo was unsustainable.
The world has to recognize this suffering even before we have escalations. The reason we have escalations is because people cannot find any hope.
No one wanted to get to this point. The tragedy of it all, in my mind, I think besides the loss of human life, is that it was preventable, easily preventable.
But this is what I mean, so it's inevitable. Because
Well,
you
the rest
cage
is
people-
inevitable. The rest is inevitable.
they've got 2 million people living in a 25-mile strip by 6 miles. That's ridiculous. If you, you know what it is like? I can't find it. I can't understand how any government can let another government ring fence an entire group of people. That's what I don't understand. Like, I can get the conflict and I can get the back and forth, but the thing is, if that wasn't happening there now, so basically, if the international government come in and said, Israel, you're not doing this,
Government, okay.
yeah. Well, the UN,
Okay, so the
G7,
Americans, the Americans.
but yeah, whoever it is.
So American hegemony. So America runs the world.
Yes.
Long story short,
Okay, go on.
America wholeheartedly backs Israel. America itself is committing atrocities, lying and misleading people all over the world.
True.
And you think it's
True.
going to come straight about Israel. It doesn't have to own up for Israel. Israel has to own up for its own self, but they're backing it. And the British lords and everybody else, they're backing it. The media owned by those groups.
But listen to what I'm saying to you, right? So we know that, right, when you've got a government or a leader who's in control, who's, let's say, a dictator, who isn't following international law, these countries feel no way about going to take that person out. I guess if it doesn't align with what they want. Yeah?
Right.
So what I'm trying to say is, but these governments that we're talking about should, and politics should be worked with, they should be held accountable by the people. Yeah?
Theoretically, democracy is something
Theoretically.
about that, something to do with that.
Yeah, theoretically. So what I'm trying to say is there should be enough pressure put on because whether you're, to me it's quite clear, right? If Israel wants to live in peace or whatever, which they don't clearly, but if they did, people, even Jewish people, would see that locking people up, building walls so people can't get out, cutting people's electricity off and doing all that madness is only going to escalate things.
But there are people down there who are practicing Jews who know that and have never advocated or supported anything that the Zionist Netanyahu government is doing. They're not on a religious conquest, they're on a next conquest. But there are people who are there on a
Protesting.
religious thing. But like I say, you're guilty for what your people do. You can't say, well, I'm living here and getting the benefits. It's like there's lots of black groups down there from America from in the 60s and 70s. Ziggy Marley said he's not black. He lives down there with his wife and his family. People go there and get crazy to fit in. That's our society. It was a world full of men who had become women. Ziggy would be wearing a skirt, bro. Simple like that. You know, people do what they gotta do to fit in. The rights and wrongs are nobody should be murdering anybody. Now, for systematically, it's been on TV and in the radio. The churches collect money and go down there and support it for 75 years. Why would they think they're wrong when they're doing anything when everybody lets them do what they want to do anyway and gives them money? America's giving them money to fight this war. Did you hear America giving Palestine any money? Not a single penny. But they already got how many millions they're going to split between Ukraine and Israel. Why is that? Palestine didn't have any guns in the first place, so why do you need to be sending all these new machinery down there? They showed all the tanks that Israel had lined up ready to go. You know, it says some push go-karts for the Palestinians, I think.
It's crazy.
You get me?
Yeah. I mean,
To
obviously,
me,
I'm sorry.
move them out. They said they're going to move them to Egypt. Egypt says it says a declaration of war, putting 2 million people in Egypt, putting all the pressure on them.
Would it really though?
Huh?
Would it really? Well, 2 million people is a lot of people, but I mean, spread over Egypt's massive, isn't it? You spread 2 million
why would
people.
they have to deal with the problem at all? You're occupying someone's country and forcing them out into my country. That's the premise of what's going on there.
But the premise
We're not
of
going to
is if
stop
you're
you
Egypt-
about doing what you're doing, but we're not going to let you put it on us.
Yeah, see, I don't like that either. Though. To me, that's being complicit. See, I think all them Arab countries around there are complicit as well in this.
Right? Because
So
their
this is-
leaders are headpicked by European
But this is what I was saying to
politicians.
you, ain't it? Like, you can blame the Jewish people, but all them Arabs around there as well, they're just as complicit to me.
Right, Saudi can't do nothing.
Why?
Because,
Saudi got more money in America. If Saudi pulled out of America, America's finished. Why can't Saudi do nothing?
Right, because they're already doing something with the BRICS thing. So you see all the BRICS nations who are the new G7
The
effectively.
BRICS. What? Brazil, Russia, India,
Yo, this
China.
is the new big bet. Whether you want to accept it or not, the fact that
What's that got to do with Gaza, Israel? Israel are the BRICS though.
a lot of them thing Muslim countries in it. So Russia is pro-Palestine. Saudi and
Brazil,
South
Russia.
Africa, Palestine. All them countries is pro-Palestine. None of
Saudi's
them
not
support.
Saudi? Saudi's not a big country, is it?
It is.
Is it? It's
Yeah.
not.
It is. Yeah, I know you say South Africa, but Saudi's a BRICS
Is it?
country too, yeah. They've done of the new the six that were added. Saudi
Oh, I
was
don't
one
know.
of
I
them.
don't know. The new six that like there's no the original
But it's
ones.
29 countries in it now.
Oh, God knows. But this is what I'm trying to say, Nick. Like, the battery's gonna done. So